Good morning. The following session, A Word Fitly Spoken, The Benefits of Reading Aloud, will be presented by Mrs. Kristi Pauley, who is a wife and homeschool mother, as well as the recipient of the 2023 Classical Exemplar Excellentiae Domi Award. Please welcome Mrs. Pauley.
Not going to mess up the recording, but I don't want to see myself during thing. Okay, I think we're good. I didn't hit anything. All right, so as Pastor Kane said, I'm a homeschool mom. Just passionate about all the things that we are doing as classical educators. But to begin, for myself, probably more than you all, I need a word of prayer, so join me in praying. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. All right, really thank you all for coming. Those of you that may have just stepped in, would you like a handout? Anybody else need a handout before we go? Oh. Yep. Anybody else? I have them. I'm really actually quite humbled to be speaking in front of you today at this presentation. There are a lot of amazing speakers here, and I feel exceptionally humbled, I guess, that me as a homeschool mom gets to speak to you, that they've allowed me to do that today. I've been married to Josh, which he is in the program too. I think he's tomorrow at some point. Not a great wife. I don't know. But I know he's tomorrow because he was kind of jealous that I was going today and he has to wait till tomorrow. And it makes the conference kind of like he just would like to get the weight off his shoulders as well. And I get to do that before, so thank you to whoever put me before him. I like that. So I've been married to him for 19 years. And we have two girls, age 15 and 13, so I prefer to say that I've been homeschooling for 15 years. But technically, I guess it would be 10 if you go by when, school would have started. Prior to becoming a mother and staying home, I worked as an elementary school counselor. And in that limited capacity, that was for 4 years, I did witness the power of story in helping and healing the students that I worked with at my school. I worked at a Title I school, for those of you who have been in that realm before, highly impoverished area, and there were a lot of issues. I had incarcerated parents, divorce, a lot of abuse. And so stories really were restorative for those children, and that really was interesting to me. I hadn't thought of that until I had gone to grad school and learned about bibliotherapy. So that was really one of the things I did in group settings and individually with kids, was working with stories. But quite honestly, the real impetus for this presentation is my own family. I would not be here without them, without having them to have, little ones to read to, Josh to kind of nudge me towards even giving this presentation, the car ride to Tennessee when we were visiting family, where they helped me to knock out the presentation. So I am willing to give credit where credit is due, and that is definitely my family. Some of my sweetest memories as a homeschool mom are the times that we have spent reading together. I tend to read during the school day. Josh tends to read aloud in the evenings before bed, and I am so appreciative of that because I will be laying on the bed and falling asleep while he is still reading to the girls, and they still will say, "Don't you remember that part from Lord of the Rings?" No, I don't. I slept through it. Thanks be for your dad, who was willing to read that aloud to you. The girls now will even read aloud on car rides to us as we're traveling around. I don't know how many other homeschool moms there are in here. Sometimes I don't really feel like I homeschool, but I car school. So the doing of homework and reading and doing all of those things in the car, it's just what we need. Now I also have fond memories of myself when I was in school being read aloud to. Unfortunately, my parents didn't come to this presentation, 40 years ago. And so there wasn't a lot of reading aloud in my house. But at school, thankfully back then, there still was reading aloud. Our librarian, Mrs. Smith, she'd sit down with us on the floor at a weekly time during the library. And I remember some of my favorites being like, Miss Nelson is missing. This may resonate with some of you in my era. The Berenstain Bears. And actually she would read little excerpts from the chapters of those Thornton Burgess books. And I loved those as a kid. And now that I know that probably was exceptional in a public school, I'm very thankful for that because I knew about them to read aloud to my kids, and I loved those. I also have vivid memories of my own fourth grade teacher, Miss Richards, who would read us Where the Red Fern Grows after recess every day. And even at the end, it's tragic. I'm pretty sure even some of the boys were like covertly wiping away tears. They didn't really want to own up to it, but that was definitely happening. And many of you probably have similar memories and stories of being read aloud to either at home or in school. We also, at our church, so I've done this as a homeschool mom, right? But at our church next fall, we are launching a school. So I also am hoping during this conversation that we're having today that some of the actual teachers and administrators who have done this in a school setting can help me glean some good ideas of how we can implement this at this school that we're going to be starting, because I do know the value of it as a homeschool mom and the sweet moments that we've had, and I deeply desire that for the students who are our church members and our church family to have that as well. All right, so we're first going to explore some of the scriptural references to reading aloud and the Word. It seems like an obvious place to start, but that's where we're going to go. So a nod to the title, right? We've got Proverbs 25. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. But that's really just talking about spoken word. And also Deuteronomy 6. Most of us probably know that one pretty well. After the great Shema, right? It says, and I am borrowing Josh's, and I'm kidding. This is like a realization when the Bible is like, getting a little. I literally just this summer went and got new glasses. I was like so prideful. I didn't need a new prescription. And now I'm looking at his Bible going, I should have got a new prescription. Okay, so we have the great Shema, and then it says, and these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. All right, so again, talking about God's word and teaching, but really we hear about the actual reading of God's word aloud. Okay, so again, I have to read here. In Nehemiah, in chapter 8, it's talking about Ezra, the prophet. It says, and all the people gathered as one man into the square before the water gate. And they told Ezra the scribe to bring the book of the law of Moses, that the law had commanded Israel. So Ezra the priest brought the law before the assembly, both men and women, and all who could understand what they heard, on the first day of the 7th month. And he read from it. Oh boy, what does that say? This is embarrassing, y'all. I did have somebody tell me, you can't round down anymore. You can only round up to 50. Like, oh, it's getting close. Facing the square before the water gate from early morning until midday. Okay, that's a long time. Early morning to midday. They are listening to the word of the Lord being spoken. And I'm not going to continue on because it's many, many verses with some names that I don't want to even attempt to try. But we get further on, more around like verse 10, and it says that all of the people wept at hearing the word of the Lord being read aloud, which is just so sweet, and like what a treasure to them, a gift, right? We also hear in Exodus this law from Moses, Exodus 24:7. Then he, Moses, took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. And they said, all that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient. Okay, that was from Exodus 24. We get a few chapters more, maybe not so obedient with the golden calf. But we are all sinners, right? So it doesn't negate the fact that Moses was reading aloud the book. There's reading, there's scripture where Christ is reading aloud in the synagogues. We could probably spend all day going through this book and finding instances of reading aloud, but we'll go ahead and stop there. Just knowing that reading aloud is a treasure that God has given to us. Similar to Moses, the ancients also utilized reading aloud, and again, I'm going to say reading aloud, because most of them had it memorized, which is amazing to me. I am completely in awe of their power, of their memory. I can't commit this presentation to memory. I can't even do the 4 minutes and 41 seconds that Pastor Paul did from memory the other day. Like, that's amazing to me. But they had these stories in their hearts and committed to memory. Think Homer, Virgil, even epic tales, even into like Arthurian tales, right? These would have been spoken aloud, and people would have been hearing and listening to them more than reading them like we do today. So going back to our earliest times, stories were verbal. Historically, monks also read aloud in monasteries to one another, so that like communal reading aloud during their times together was quite common. But also, even when they were just reading to themselves, they would utter the words out loud. Okay, so this was new to me, and I have to confess I'm redeeming my education, and maybe I haven't gotten to Augustine's Confessions yet. Okay, it's all right. I can admit that. But Josh has. And so as I was preparing for this, he said, oh, there's this great little incident in Augustine's Confessions. You should add that. So I did. I'm going to talk about it. But it's a nudge to me that, like, I got to get my rear in gear and, like, maybe read Augustine's Confessions. So thank you to him for the following reference. So Augustine notes in his Confessions that he was quite puzzled when he happened upon Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan, who was apparently reading to himself. So it says, quote, when he read, his eyes would travel across the pages, and his mind would explore the sense, but his voice and tongue were silent. It's like totally out of this world to him that somebody would do this. He says, whatever his reason, that man undoubtedly had a good one. So like he can't even fathom why he would read silently to yourself, because everything was a read aloud, even to yourself. And that was the norm, that reading silently, this thing that we all do all the time, just didn't exist. So that was kind of mind-blowing to me. You can read Augustine's Confessions on a deep dive on that. If you want to know more about this history of like monks and reading aloud and things, Josh pointed me to this book, In the Vineyard of the Text. He really liked that one, and he said it's a commentary on Hughes, and redeeming my education here, y'all. Didascalion? I'm sure there is somebody here who knows it way better. You're much better at this. But Josh said he's even now going to just read this because he thought it was so great. So this might be a really good reference for you. Shameless plug. There's a chapter in this book written by my husband about that. So if you want more reading on that, like history of reading and how it morphed from what it was to what it is now, those are some good resources. So lastly, in talking about the history of reading aloud, we can discuss the reading of Scripture in churches that we still experience today, and until recently would have been done aloud, with the congregation being solely hearers of the word rather than readers of the word, right? Not everybody would have had a Bible. If you did, you brought it. Maybe the church didn't have enough Bibles for everybody. There certainly weren't computers and printers and bulletins that were being, transported, and people are like reading now instead of just hearing. So my challenge to you maybe would be to put that down, or put your Bible down, and see what that's like to just hear and like become immersed in the Word instead of reading it and like reasoning your way through it sometimes. And that was quite a gift to people who didn't maybe own a Bible or couldn't read a Bible, if that was the case, that hearing of the Word was a treasure to them, a gift from God. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the history. We're going to switch gears now and take a look at what some of the research has to say. And this was one of my more favorite parts of the presentation to read about, because it has been a gift to me reading aloud, and I enjoy reading other people's perspectives on reading aloud. So I have some books here to talk about. But this is a Jim Trellis book that was lovingly gifted to us when we became parents, and there are newer editions than this one. This is like 6th edition. There's now an 8th edition, but it's not the one that I know and love and have read. So I didn't bring that one. I brought ours from home. But there is a newer one, and I did read it from the library to see what had changed, and a few things had, but a lot of things were amazingly still the same. So in this book, he cites a 1985 report titled Becoming a Nation of Readers, and it states that, quote, "Reading aloud is the single most important activity for building knowledge for eventual success in reading, and, a little convicting here, and that this practice should continue throughout the grades." It's not just for little people. All right, so that's 1985. This book's a little dated. That study is a little dated. I'm a little dated. So lest you be wary of findings due to its age, there's a book by Rebecca Bellingham. It didn't come in from the library in time for me to be able to read it. It's on the back sheet on the bibliography if you're interested in reading her book. But she notes a 2018 report from the International Literacy Association, and it states, remarkably similar to the 1985 report, that reading aloud is undoubtedly one of the most important activities to help children develop skills and knowledge needed to become readers. So not much has changed in 40 years, and as classical educators, we're probably okay with the fact that not much has changed in even 400 years. So another one that I really like is this book, Sarah Mackenzie's Read Aloud Family. She interviewed a professor from BYU, and that professor, Dr. Joseph Price, one of the studies that he did, found that just one extra day of reading aloud per week increased student standardized test scores by 15 to 30 percentage points. All right, so we have some statistics that sound wonderful. Higher test scores. We have some statistics that it makes you a better reader eventually. And both of those are worthy causes for reading aloud, certainly. But I think truly the beauty of reading aloud lies in what Sarah Mackenzie also states in her book herself. She says, "What better education can we offer our children than the shaping of their hearts to love others as we have been loved by God ourselves?" And then author Catherine Patterson, she also taps into the same. She says that, quote, "Story has been the vehicle for truth for as long as the human race can remember." And that really resonates with me as a homeschool mom, and maybe some of you as parents or teachers, that what we really want is our children and our students to become like students with chests, okay? Think about C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man, right? And he talks about men with chests, but we want students with chests. We want students that love virtue, that want truth, that want goodness, that want beauty. And we want all of that to be embedded in their hearts. And that's not like a forced thing, right? And so reading aloud is a way to almost, imbibe them in that naturally. Now, all of the books that I read, so I had these two books, and I'll talk about this one here in a little bit, but all of the books, beyond just these ideals of truth and goodness and beauty, they also have some additional basic tenets of why we should read aloud. And so, first of all, we want our children and our students to learn the power of story and how powerful a story can be. And certainly, going to public school, I talking about those boys who were being read aloud and hearing Where the Red Fern Grows and maybe crying a bit, right? That's powerful. And even more so, that we as classical Christian educators, we want our students to love that they are a part of the greatest story that's been written, right? And that in Christ, we want to continue to pass along this story, this faith to others. So reading aloud can help with that power of story. All right, so second, and this is kind of one of my favorites, is that we develop shared friendships, and I'm going to put friendships in air quotes here as well. And by this, I mean that I can read and become bosom friends with Anne and Diana, and I could have a classmate or my child or a family member read the same book and become bosom friends with Anne and Diana and envision this life in Avonlea, and they maybe even become bosom friends with Gilbert. We'll be okay with that. And now, though, we have this shared conversation, right? We have shared friendships. And that's a way to connect us. That's something I think that as classical educators as well, right? We're trying to become a part of this great conversation from the books that have been written and the truths in them, and we want to be in dialogue with those. But some of those books maybe aren't as easy to become friends with. So I really love reading aloud and becoming friends with the characters in those stories. And you may even be like our family, that some of our favorite shared friends from books, like Sal or Frodo and Sam, or I don't know if any of you, this is like my husband's family's like read aloud, Miss Susie, that these become like literally part of your family. And when we see an acorn on the ground, we say, oh, there's an OI, because my mother-in-law would read this book and she'd say, oh, I love to cook. You know, there's a little ditty in here about her using her acorn cups. And that's what my kids called acorns when they were little, was OIs, because they literally thought that's what they were from the book. So it just becomes part of our sweet story. We also have one, I don't know. Okay, so Robert McCloskey, obviously I have Make Way for Ducklings up there. Blueberries for Sal, you know, Sal is near and dear to our hearts. He has another one called, now I'm not even going to remember it, because all I can remember is Bert Dow. One Morning in Maine. He has that one. But there's, it might be called Bert Dow, Deepwater Man. That might be the title of it. But that's the character. And we literally cannot say it in our house without hearing my husband going, Bert Dow, Deepwater Man. And so, like, every time we see a little rinky-dink boat, we'll go, oh, there's Bert Dow's boat. Like, it's just part of your lore. So that's like the love of reading aloud, but also children are introduced to the grammar and structure of language differently than just a conversation. All right, so conversations have a different level of vocabulary, a different structure, a different syntax. Even my poor, pitiful presentation here is going to be different than a book that an author has labored over the choice of words and the rhetorical devices used and the story arc that's happening, and that all of that just comes into the student naturally by hearing the book being read aloud versus, learning language just from conversation. All right, the vocabulary itself is going to explode their minds. Students also build, a lot of the research that I found builds comprehension and critical thinking skills. Those are like buzzwords now in my brain that I just don't even, I don't even know if I unfortunately put a lot of weight given to those research results now, just because everything is so geared towards comprehension and critical thinking skills. And I'm going to say I just maybe don't care so much about that, because I think what we're doing as classical educators does that inherently. And so, yes, that's a wonderful benefit of reading aloud, but I think all the other things that we're doing as classical educators, like, nudge us in that direction as well. So this isn't going to be like the only way they're going to get that. But most importantly, we find comfort and peace from reading aloud. Think of settling in, relaxing into a different world, free from the cares of this world. We find ourselves slipping into another's shoes, practicing what it might have been like to live their life. Maybe even questioning our own ability to be brave and heroic before a moment comes in real life when we're tested in that way. That reading aloud is a delight, and the memories made together cherished. Again, a treasure. Think back to those, that scripture reading. That's a treasure and a gift from God that you, as a teacher or a parent, are giving this gift. It's not just like a check mark to mark off that you got it done for the day. But it's really a treasure. It's a gift to the ones you are reading aloud to. All right, so we've looked at the history. We've looked at some of the research. I am quite certain there is like a ton other out there. So if you are a data head and you need more research that's like quantitatively out there to give to a headmaster or somebody to try to like nudge them that we need to find time somehow for reading aloud, it's out there. I just stuck to some of my like standbys to look at. But in the how, this was a new book to me, and maybe not to some of you, but I had never read this one when my girls were little. But it's Pam Allen, What to Read When. And I was pleasantly surprised that I really loved this book because I think she lays out a really great strategy for how to read aloud. And this came naturally to me. I'm a reader. I love to read. I couldn't wait to start reading aloud to my kids. That was like something I even did when they were nursing. I would just start reading books to them because I just thought it was so wonderful. But I completely understand that that is not where everybody comes from, and that reading aloud might be intimidating or this like new experience. And what if I get it wrong? Or I don't know. It might not be the thing you want to do. It could be a little daunting. So she has an easy access point for how to navigate the world of read aloud. She has a little mnemonic. I brought these, and cleverly enough, oh, isn't she smart? She's so smart. So I would also say too, in thinking about this like new school start that we're going to be doing, and it's going to be a hybrid school, so teacher and parents are going to have to have a lot of dialogue to make sure that this is going to work. And I think this is one of those pieces that we're really going to have to dialogue a lot about, because what if we have some parents that aren't comfortable with reading aloud, and you probably have parents of your students that are not comfortable reading aloud at night with their kids. So I think that this may help a little to ease the intimidation factor of reading aloud. So we remember this mnemonic. It's ritual, environment, access, and dialogue. I'm pretty sure I spelled that right, but if I didn't, correct me before it goes out to the world. All right, so R, she has the ritual. So I loved this because I was sitting in Miss Anna Hahn's classroom management session yesterday, and she brought out very well the fact that kids really love structure, right? And a schedule, and they like to know their routine. And so rituals can help with that, right? It's going to provide a structure and boundaries and routines for your students, or even at home in your homeschool, for this to become part of the day, just naturally. It's a great way to make family traditions. It's a great way to enhance your classroom culture. And that with this our ritual, consistency is going to be the key. And it doesn't have to be an everyday consistency, because some of us, it's life, y'all. It's real life, and it's in the classroom, and you get busy and something happens. But if you can make it a habit so that even if you miss a day here or there, it doesn't detract from this habit that you are forming. Also, choosing to read aloud, doing this ritual of reading aloud, versus choosing other modes of entertainment, whether that's TV or movies at home, or playing video games, or iPhones, or in the classroom. I don't know how many are in schools with like Chromebooks and tablets or whatever else it may be that you could be doing. By choosing to read aloud, you're showing your children and your students what's really important. That family time together, or in the case of school, that your classmates and your relationships formed in that class, that dynamic, is what is important. And so even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes a day, you are like pouring out that treasure to them and showing them, modeling for them what is important. All right, so we're going to go to E, environment now. So creating a space that invites reading. And I love like little different nooks to read in at our house, but I am aware that couches and nooks are probably not going to be in your class. So like a little corner, even just a special carpet that you sit down on and read, can create like a separate environment. Also, like you come into this space and this is where we just get to relax and become immersed in the story, so that it's somewhat free from outside distractions, which I know is not completely ever possible. And certainly some of the times that we have done read alouds, you're just in an airport. And you can't get away from it. But it's a way to captivate your children for a good bit. I think it was 2 winters ago. We went skiing with my husband's sister, and she has 2 little ones. And I do not like skiing. And I told them, like, literally, I'm so happy to stay in the lodge and drink hot chocolate and read aloud to your kids while you all go and ski. And it was so great. And I kept loving, like, all the glances we'd get from the other people in the lodge, that I had, like, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And we pretty much, I literally brought this bag with me, stuffed full of my favorite books, and we just read them over and over, right? So environment is helpful, but not necessary. You can do it anywhere. My husband and I also coached for 13 years cross country, and the athletic director was so gracious. He loved that we would bring the girls. So, like, in utero and on, they were always at cross country practice with us. And I, of course, would bring books to, keep them occupied even when they couldn't read them themselves. They just liked turning the pages. And we would have the cross country students come, and they were like fascinated that they had books. And then they would be like, "Oh, let me read this to you." So we even captivated other people to read aloud to our kids. And that was also, I think, like, lovely. The area we live in, maybe some of those students don't really have that at their house and their families. And we just felt like that was such a beautiful thing, that we could bring our families and show them what family life was really like, and that this was part of family. So environment is great, but not like a law, right? There's lots of grace with environment. Okay, so then we have A, access, and that is the ease in which, like, books are available. So for us at home, is there a basket of books in the living room? Are there baskets of books in bedrooms? When we were potty training, we had a basket of books in the bathroom, because my second child, she was stubborn, and you would take her to the potty, and it would be 45 minutes later, like, "Could you just please go to the bathroom?" So we did some reading aloud in the bathroom then. So access in your classroom might obviously look different. You're not going to have a basket in the bathroom at your classroom. But you might have a classroom library. Maybe this could be like a movement that like shapes the world. Like what if you went into Concordia, Wisconsin right here and you were like in the bathroom and there was a book or something? Like maybe the lines wouldn't move as quick. I don't know. That might not be great. But that'd be kind of fun. I'm like thinking about that now. I didn't even think about that, y'all. Like books in public. No, you don't want to do that. That's gross. That's kind of not. Maybe just keep it at home. Okay. All right. So a classroom library. How much access do kids? Like if you have an actual school library, are they only allowed to go on their day, or do they have free access to the library? How easy is it for them to check books out and take them home? Those kinds of things. So that's like the ease to actually, like actual books. But then also access has like a two-edged sword here. You also want access to all kinds of books, right? So you want books on various topics that might be relevant, and this is totally classical. You probably already do this, but right, you're studying something. Oh, guess what would make a great read aloud? Something about what you've been studying. Or a field trip that you might be preparing to go on. You could have some read alouds on that. I am a fiction lover, so this is like convicting to me. I just love to read fiction, but I also know that interspersing genres is good. It's like a little harder to like immerse yourself into the story of a nonfiction, but if it was a really good biography, I think that would be a great nonfiction for read aloud. And that has certainly been good for me, being married to a nonfiction dude that like his side of the bookshelf and my side of the bookshelf, and like he reads here and I read there, and like occasionally the twain shall meet. But it is good to switch between genres, and kids like are fascinated by nonfiction books. It's I don't get it because I am a fiction lover, but like my second daughter, she will just read an encyclopedia about animals. Now, am I going to read that aloud? Probably not. But they do love those read alouds. So if you have a great one that you can find, that may be a way to switch things up a little bit in the classroom or at home and give it like a fresh take. So then we are to D, dialogue. And this is all about like the conversations that come from reading aloud and sharing a story together. So conversation right at the moment of reading the book. I think there are times and places for that, and it's really fun. I remember when the girls were little, just asking them what they see on the page. As they get older, you can ask older children what they think about the choice that was just made, or what they think will happen next. And I definitely did that off and on, but I also think that sometimes just reading a story uninterrupted so you can get into the story is lovely as well. And so if that is where your heart lies, then the conversation can come afterwards. And it can be immediately afterwards, or maybe you've got to make dinner, or you've got to go to whatever class next, and you don't really have time to hit those concepts right then. It's a story, and it's powerful, and it will be in their brains, and you can talk to them sometime later that day. You can talk to them sometime later that week, and they are probably still going to remember that story. You may be like our family, where years later we're still laughing at some of those same stories and memorable lines, and that's what drives even some of our family vacations. They want to go to these places and have these conversations and this dialogue with even the place where it was set. So I don't want to remove this book because I don't want to see myself. Okay, I'll do it. There's this book, Blueberries for Sal, and it's set in Maine. And so our heart's desire is, I'm going to mess this up now. Our heart's desire is to go to Maine. And some of the other Robert McCloskey books, like One Morning in Maine, set at Bucks Harbor. Oh my gosh, we can't wait to go to Bucks Harbor just because of a book. And then drive the 8 hours, and Lord willing, we get a passport and we can go to Canada and go to PE Island and see Avonlea. That is what my children want to do before they leave and launch from our house. That's what they want to do. So reading aloud together formed that in them. It's a conversation that we continue to have. And I hope that will remain part of our family culture and can be a part of your classroom culture. Although I don't know that you can really take a field trip to PE Island. So that may have to just be something your families get to do. Lastly, in doing the doing of the reading aloud, just try to remember that you are being a role model for your children and for your students into this wonderful world of stories. And that especially a lot of the research shows that for young boys, this is highly important for men to be involved in. And I love that my husband wanted to do the read alouds as much as I did. But some dads, need a little extra push. But struggling readers, and maybe just disinterest in reading, not so much a struggle, but just disinterested in reading. There's a lot of research that shows that once dad gets into the picture, that world takes off for that little boy. And so not just moms being role models, but dads too, right? Think of it, so we're all passing along this story, we're all passing along the faith, so let's all be involved in this powerful story thing that we're doing. And this can also, be lovely for homeschool moms, for dad to have a moment with them after you've been with them all day. And for you men in the room that have classes, really to try to do this with your students because it is transformative for them. All right, so, oh my goodness, I have 10 minutes total. I can't believe that. Okay, what does this look like at the different ages? I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly because I wanted to get to a read aloud, and I don't know if I'm actually going to have time. Okay, so when we are infants, our brains are only, this was shocking to me. I knew, our brains aren't fully developed. It's only 25%, y'all. 25% developed at birth. So it follows that a large portion of development is happening after birth, right? And the more stimulation we can provide, the more rapid that development occurs. And by age 1, children will have heard all the sounds that make up their native language. And so babies, infants, are wonderfully passive listeners at this point, right? Perfect for read-alouds. They may try to grasp for the book, and that's fine. They may try to eat it, that's fine. And it may seem trivial, but they learn that rhythm and the coziness of the activity. Okay, so they're obviously not learning to read, but it's getting them habituated to that activity. And for the person, the parent or the older sibling, it's a sweet moment. You're holding the baby. It's intangible benefits that we're reaping here. Okay, so even infants, I think I mentioned that I did it when I was nursing. I had this sweet, Beatrix Potter Treasury read aloud thing. Oh my goodness, I don't know how many times I read that when they were nursing. It was so great. So then infants become toddlers. They grow from passive to active. I think we have a few in here, and it's awesome. I love it. I love babies and toddlers, and it's all okay. Like all the wiggles, okay. All the short attention spans, it's okay. All the it may only last for a minute, it's okay, right? Because you're just trying to develop that habit and routine, and incrementally, just like you've learned at church and things, like the wiggles go away, and the time that you're able to do it lengthens, their attention span lengthens, and you get there. For some, more quicker than others, right? But you will get there. And it's really important because speaking skills are being developed at this time. And so a lot of the research that I did talked about rhymes being neurally important for your brain. There's actually a reason why Mother Goose is so great with kids, because that is where they are at developmentally and what their brains need to develop at that moment. And we also know that toddlers are super classical at this age. They just want it over and over and over and over and over again, the same thing. And you're like, what about this book? No, this. No, what about this book? No, it's the same book. And that is okay. We are classical educators, and we can lean into that and know that the repetition is okay. I also, just a really quick note, that research has said that kids need to hear about 1,000 stories before they can actually start to read on their own. Okay? So it sounds like a lot, but if you think that kids really aren't reading until they're about 5, you've only got less than a book a day, right? We can do this. We can do this, people. And the more you do, the better it is for them. So don't limit yourself, obviously. So infants, toddlers, then we have grammar stage, elementary age students. And oftentimes, I think this might be a little bit where reading aloud, you think of it as a little kid activity. But elementary age is still really important, especially for struggling readers, so that they can still be captivated by story. Because for them, reading is really hard, and it's like they're riding the struggle bus, y'all. So, and they don't want to read. They don't want to do the story thing. So if you can be reading aloud to them and still capturing their imagination and showing them how wonderful stories are, that once they finally get over that hurdle, whatever the hurdle is for them on this struggle bus, that they will still really actually love stories and not loathe stories. So elementary age, you can start, the little board books become chapter books. And I think here, the little ditties and rhymes turn into poetry. Okay, and I really don't want to neglect the beauty of reading poetry aloud to your kids. I know we have some favorites that we did when the girls were little. We started with the nonsense, Edward Lear nonsense poems, or even Shel Silverstein kind of is along that same vein. But we also did Robert Louis Stevenson poetry, and then they really loved it, and they actually wanted more deep poetry. And we have this book, of course I didn't bring it, it's 30 poems to read before it's too late, or 30 poems to memorize before it's too late. It was from Circe. And I started reading those poems aloud, not with the intention that they were going to memorize them, but because I thought, oh, well, it's probably good poems. When they were about 3rd grade, I mean, these are like John Donne poems and like poems, and they still know them. And thank the Lord, this is how it works. They have them memorized just from constantly repeating them and having that read aloud. So poetry is really important at the elementary age. And I also would say that during this age, their attention spans are getting a little longer, you can totally tap into audiobooks at lunch or downtimes or in the car. Maybe things when you don't have the time and you realize that you haven't had a moment to read aloud in a while, pop in the audiobook. It's very helpful. Some of them are really well done. Okay, so then we have teens, and I would just say to keep at it. All right, teens still really want read alouds, and I'm blown away by that as I experience that in my own house. I will also say that reading aloud for teens that may have devices in your classroom or in your home, no judging, but if they do have them, a lot of what they're reading now is just like short excerpts or like it's like they think they're getting it from everywhere, but it's seemingly like from nowhere, and it's disconnected, and their attention spans maybe are going the opposite way. And so that reading aloud at this moment for teens can be a way to still tap into the true, good, and beautiful together, and can focus their attention spans a little more that we're hoping for. Certainly the influence of digital media is beyond the scope of this presentation. You could probably look at a couple years ago when my husband did one, or shameless plug again, read his book. But as classical educators and parents, we should be aware of the choices we're making and what those choices communicate to our kids and students, and how those choices are furthering the development of habits toward family life together and the true good and beautiful around us. Okay, y'all, tell me how you do it at your home or your school. That is what I would love to know. We only have a few minutes left, and I have like good books. If you want to, these are good book lists that if you want to look and peruse them afterwards before we leave out. But anybody that's at a school, how do you guys implement read alouds in your classroom or your school?
So for us, read aloud in my classroom isn't like separate from literature.
Yeah.
I do all literature out loud, and the separate part is the silent reading.
Okay.
So our whole curriculum is read.
Is reading aloud.
While they follow along.
Yeah.
But we flipped it, and I don't take a lot of stock in standardized testing, but our reading scores,
that's what it says, right? Yeah.
So the kids that hated reading can build such a bond with them in the classroom that that's their favorite subject by the time they're done.
Yeah. It's so great, right?
So I think we get this weird pattern where they have to read and they have to answer questions and they have to turn it in.
Yeah.
And we don't do any of that in my classroom anymore. And
it's freeing
for everybody.
It's so freeing.
Yeah.
And
I give them a central question ahead of time, like, okay, we're reading this book.
Yeah.
Here's the truth that we're searching for.
Yeah. So, tell me about it afterwards, right? Yeah.
So then afterwards we talk about it. Sometimes they write about it.
Yeah, like a little narration or something. Yeah.
There's an assessment, but if you really rethink what assessment has to be.
Yeah. Again, a whole other presentation week. I love that. I think that's great. So like flipping that idea of like just a small portion of the day where it's really a longer portion.
Okay, this is just a question.
Yeah.
I'm like one of those who negates the read aloud sometimes just because of the like homework stuff. So this is why I'm here, so I can glean this information. But I guess I'm having difficulty. I get everything you're saying.
Yeah.
But practically, just how can I'm one parent.
Yeah.
I have 4 kids, different grades. She likes one thing, my son likes another. But some of these, as they're older, they're thicker books. Right?
Yeah.
So it's no longer, 15 where
I can go kid, we chunk it. Like we would read, a page or two of like Anne of Green Gables or Little House.
But how do I keep switching? So I want this gathering of us sitting together.
It seems beautiful,
corner,
right?
Right, yeah. And like the apple pie sitting down, I'm like reading. The kids are like, oh, this is fantastic. We're reading last thing. the problem I have is like my son wants the swashbuckler, right? So like he wants
Yeah.
like the glory, the pirates, and
Yeah.
and it's fascinating. I love it. But then over here, we got to do like a little bit more somber, like
Right.
Black Beauty or something
Right.
like that. Then I have Brandy over there who wants something. So I feel.
Do you have an
always
answer to
kind of
this, or is
pushed.
it a different?
Kind of,
Yeah.
yes. So one of the things Sarah McKenzie mentions in her
Yeah.
book is using audiobooks. So a lot of us teach from the car sometimes. So when you're driving, that's an opportunity. Okay, we're going to do an audiobook for this kid this week, and we'll read a book for this kid this week at home. And then you can flip-flop back and forth.
That doesn't ruin kind of like the immersion of
Oh
it.
no, they remember that story and
So you
like
can
immediately. Like I don't remember where we stopped.
Okay.
They can tell you the word that we stopped
Okay,
at.
so I could just like pause. And
Yes.
Like, okay, listen, we're gonna take a little break. Okay?
Yeah.
Gilbert eventually is gonna get with
Right.
it. We're
What do you
go
think,
with it,
Jonathan?
right?
I was just going to say, the other thing is keep in mind that the breadth and listening and reading books that are not their genre that they
Right.
really enjoy, it's actually really good. And you'd be surprised how much it's wind up. Ultimately, good stories are good stories, even if they're not necessarily in that genre that's there. And so it may not ever be their favorite book, but they will actually come to engage and really enjoy it,
Right.
even if it's not kind of their area.
I
So
think
don't feel like you have to just constantly mix and match and kind of perfectly put one in each other, because there's time for their individual reading as well for some of those, but finding good stories that they can read and
And you
enjoy.
just say, "This is what we're doing as a family."
Right. And
You
it's-
have your
and
other
maybe-
reading time,
and-
but
I mean,
we're
like,
doing
we've
this
got
as a
the age
family.
gap, right? And so kind of for us, we have a little bit of divide and conquer on some of the stories that we're reading.
Yeah.
But at the same time, kind of even some of the stories that I'm reading now to my youngest children, some of the older ones remember those stories and will sit in on occasion
Yeah.
while we're doing those read-alouds.
Another thing, Adrian, that I was thinking, I read in one of these books about a mom. I'm not a morning person, but she felt like she didn't have a lot of time in the day, and kind of a little bit of your scenario. And so that's what she did when they woke up. Like each one, she went to their bedroom and she just had a quick read aloud with them, and that's like part of their morning wake up routine. That would be really hard for me, but maybe easier for you. If you do like a morning time, like a morning meeting time, that's when we would do it, is during morning meeting time.
So I just want to share something really, really quick. So
Yeah.
I love reading to my kids. Like both of them, they are like one is a baby and the other one is a toddler. You know, in Ecuador, back in Ecuador, I'm an English teacher, so I said I want to read English books to my kids. And right now, that is part of our routine. So
Yeah.
my toddler, her name is Annie. She doesn't go to sleep if she does not read. Like if I don't read
Right.
a book to her, right? So sometimes it's like, Annie, it's really late. We really need to sleep. She's like, no, mommy, I want my book. But she doesn't fall asleep if I don't read a book
Right.
to her. And sometimes she's like, no, I don't like English, read it in Spanish, so I translate
Right.
the book. But right now what I have realized is that she memorized the books, even though she does not know how to read. Sometimes she just repeats, and she's like, Daddy, I want to read. No, you don't read it anymore. I'm going to read it for you, because as you said.
Or they'll say,
like-
"You skipped a word."
And she's exactly. So
I
she-
know, I was trying to get through it.
and I'm like, you have so many books, and you always want the same one. And she's like, because it's my favorite, and I know it already, so I know
Yeah.
what you're gonna say, and I like the way it is. So even though I read some of the books in Spanish, and I use English because she knows the books are read in Spanish, she's like, okay, you can use English now,
Yeah.
because that's something new for me. So I'm just amazed for the things that you said, and I think that it's amazing to have our kids into reading. My husband, he's not a reader. He doesn't like to read, but he's like, reading to our kids has been one of the most wonderful
Yeah.
gifts that we have.
It is.
given
It's a
to
gift.
them. So I just
Okay,
wanted to share
so
that.
this is my extra make way for the ducklings copy, because I just go to stores. I mean, I have a 15 and 13-year-old. There's no need for me to be finding these books anymore. But I find them and I'm like, that is such a good deal, I can't not get it. So I actually have like just a random make way for ducklings. I was going to give it to the person farthest away. I think Ecuador wins. Okay, so in closing, I was going to have time for a read aloud. I don't, but I do have a poem really quick. Strickland Gilliland, just to encourage you more. He wrote The Reading Mother. I had a mother who read to me sagas of pirates who scoured the sea, cutlasses clenched in their yellow teeth, blackbirds stowed in the hold beneath. I had a mother who read me lays of ancient and gallant and golden days, stories of Marmion and Ivanhoe, which every boy has a right to know. I had a mother who read me tales of Gellert the Hound of the Hills of Wales. I don't know him. True to his trust till his tragic death, faithfulness blent with his final breath. I had a mother who read to me the things that wholesome life to the boy heart brings, stories that stir with an upward touch. Oh, that each mother of boys were such. You may have tangible wealth untold, caskets of jewels and coffers of gold. Richer than I, you can never be. I had a mother who read to me. Thanks, y'all. That was, I have his name because I wrote it down, Strickland Gilliland.